Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast, coming in your ear holes with the next episode of the Going Back to the Basics series. Today, I talk with Jake about time and stand, and not your classic normal time and stand makes for more opportunities, at these bucks and deer that we're trying to kill, but the in-depth time and stand. The small details like how early do you go in the morning? Do you want to be in there an hour before dark, a half hour before dark? Different scenarios that might play. How late should you set? Per time of year, should you set later? Should you set later in November? Should you set later in December? What time should you get in there in the afternoon? Per time of year. How late should you set? Is it okay to leave before dark in the afternoon if your target buck doesn't show up? Should you set an hour after dark if your target buck doesn't show up, just in case he showed up right at dark so you don't spook him? We cover a bunch of topics in this episode. I really enjoyed it. Let's get the people to make this possible, get in the show. Starting off with Exodus Outdoor Gear, guys. If you're in the market for a new cellular trail cam, they just released their new rival cell cam, that $179 5-year no BS warranty cell cam from Exodus. You're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a pretty good deal on a cell cam, but you're still getting that 5-year warranty and that theft and damage 50% off warranty for one camera. So if you put this on public land and it gets stolen, you're going to get 50% off that first camera. Or if someone vandalizes it or something, you get 50% off. So get that Exodus Advantage. You're also getting that Exodus customer service. So if you have any problem with anything, they're going to take care of you. And you're going to talk to one of the owners or one of the main operators of the brand, which I absolutely love. So that is a new Exodus rival trail cam from Exodus Outdoor Gear. They also have some new arrows coming out. They just released a podcast about that over on their platform on Trail Cam Radio. If you're interested in that, they're coming out with some micro diameter arrows this year. So check that out. Also, some news. I am going to be going to Waypoint like a lot of the other podcasts are going to be doing. So there will be some random ads at the beginning of the show. Hopefully it doesn't affect the quality of the show too much, but it's a good opportunity to make some money for the show, to keep it flowing, and keep the guests coming in, and me being able to do some more trips and some more stuff with my family. So be on the lookout for that. That is going to be happening here sometime soon, probably the next month or so. But let's get in the show and get Jake on the line. All right, we got Jake Collett on the line, and we're going to break down some time and stand tonight. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good, man. Appreciate you bringing up this topic. I want to give you full credit on this. I posted on the Last Breath in a Circle of just some basic stuff that maybe someone hadn't talked about that I could throw into this series. And maybe just some basic tips that you don't hear people talk about, maybe not a topic, but you had mentioned, going in early. And I was like, that's something that's not ever talked about is how early do you go in? How long do you stay? How long do you stay per time of the year? How can you leave before dark? Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to get into, but I appreciate you putting the idea in my head of having this podcast with and posting on that, because I probably would have never thought of adding this into that series.
Yeah, I was. I mean, it was pretty great to see. You were asking people on, the basic stuff, and it just immediately hit my head. I'm like, I can hear my uncle in my head saying, "Hey, we got to get there early," and his early might be a lot sooner than a lot of other people's uh, morning journey to the tree stand. He's pretty anal. If if we ain't getting in there early, he's not happy. And
Yeah. So
yes,
that sparked the idea of this podcast. So before we get in too deep here, let the people know who you are and what you do real quick.
I'm Jake Collett. I'm from Northeast Indiana. I got a wife and two boys. I'm a boom truck driver, which kind of helps me out on my, what time the deer are moving because I get to drive all day. Um, I also have a podcast slash page called Blue Collar Whitetails. We kind of shine light on the blue collar hunter that just gets to go out on the weekend. I'm very transparent on our fails and the small victories we do have. There's a bunch of people that post up, they smacked a 6-pointer or even a spike, and we celebrate it pretty hard, like it's a big trophy class deer. So
That is one thing I will give you guys credit. You guys go hard when you guys are successful. I love those Snapchats and posts, dude. You guys are partying like crazy, which
oh yeah,
is so cool to see. You know, especially you're partying when you're killing, you're partying when your buddy's killing, and you're all
oh,
jacked up, fired up. And I think your platform and you sharing that for me, it's beneficial because a lot of us, like me recently, we don't have that really good buddy that we hunt with a lot. So it's cool to see that and see you guys going so hard and being successful because there's someone out there that was probably a little bit discouraged about shooting a smaller buck, and then they see you guys like slamming beers and being real happy on a buck smaller than that, and they're like, well, hell, maybe I should be more proud of what I did. So props to you
oh,
for going hard on all that.
well, yeah, I appreciate that. It all kind of started with my best friend Colton and I. A couple years ago, we were always making jokes in the tree stand because we hunt together a lot, and we were just always joking about people always wanting the big deer, which is true, but you got to celebrate the small victories, and like this year, opening day of rifle, I thought I shot two does and it turned out to both be button bucks. And you could have swore I shot a 200 incher that day. I mean, the beers were flowing. We had trap music in the garage. It was off the walls.
The old
So,
trap music bang. That's the snaps I normally get. About 6 beers deep, banging music. You guys
oh,
are
dude,
knuckling,
unreal.
high fiving. It's a badass, dude. But all right, well, let's get into this topic. We're talking time and stand. Like I said, we're not talking the normal time and stand podcasts that I've done or other people have done. Spend more time and stand. You have more opportunities to kill bucks. I think that's
Right.
pretty well known. We're kind of talking the fine details and the basics. And this is, going back to the basics. So if you are a new hunter, how valuable is this stuff we're about to say right now, like to a new hunter? Because when I thought about it, I never knew when to really go when I was first hunting. I was just like, I got time to hunt, I'm gonna go. you know?
Right. And I think if I didn't have, my uncle's shoulders to lean on there in the beginning of my journey, I probably wouldn't have killed as many deer as I have now, which still isn't a lot compared to most people, but
And
I
don't
think
knock it, dude. You've killed some nice bucks, and you kill multiple deer every year. So there's
uh,
something to that.
a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then.
Heck yeah.
But no, I think his what would you call it? Not, I don't know. His having to be in the woods that early before dark, I think kind of made me battle hardened, if that's a better way to say it. I mean, it just kind of sets you off more right. Uh, I kind of have more of a breakdown of why we would go in early. Um, but yeah, I just remember sitting there in the tree waiting sometimes 2 hours before shooting light, and I'm like amped up to the max. And I'm like, man, we still got like 4 hours to go once day breaks. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. So starting off this, um, let's start off with you know, how early is too early, and how early is too late. And I don't know if you seen this or not, but I did a poll on Instagram for this
Okay.
podcast. I didn't do it really early, but right now I have about 135 35 votes, and
Okay.
7 of them are 15 under 30 minutes, and the rest of them are above 30 minutes. So 94%, 95% is above 30 minutes early at the minimal. Um, Now I know you go in a lot earlier than that, but as I was doing this post and as I was writing out these notes, I think I'm probably a 30, 25-minute kind of guy.
Oh,
Um,
no joke.
and after talking to a lot of people, I'm going to try to beef that up to that 45-minute mark um,
Okay.
next
Uh,
year and see, 45 minute an hour, and see if that makes a big a big adjustment to the amount of deer that I see because I'm interested. I'm in there depending on per situation, which we'll get into this, but I like to be set up, chilling with nothing going on for 20 minutes. But that 20, 25, 30 minutes, you can kind of start to see a little bit. So I don't know if.
I guess to me that's pushing it. And some, like, not every time's perfect because you have the occasional nights where you've been out too late or you slept through the alarm. Um, but I always try to shoot for a minimum of 1 hour, and I'm talking like, all right, my buddy meets me here at my house. We factor in, 20-minute walk. Then I want like an hour of we're in the stand quiet. But I know that might sound like overkill to a lot of people, but um, it and like you said, it all depends on the situation. I've also killed him going in, at shooting light because I was, late on the drive there. So not saying you can't get it done, but what I've learned from going with my people and him telling me to go early, given that woods a cool down period of, you popping sticks, or maybe they catch a wind or you bump something, that hour kind of gives it, a while to cool down, and it might put you back in the chips.
Yeah, see, that's something like when I was writing those notes. That's something that I don't do. And this year I seen myself even going later and later. Like I was running, seemed like I was running late a lot. Um,
Yeah,
and I don't know if
it gets
it's,
harder as the year goes on
yeah,
too.
I mean, I don't have any excuses, but I normally have a lot of stuff going on. And just hard to wake up, man. Just after
Right.
hunting so many days in a row, it was just hard to get up and get out there. But I was right around that 25, 30-minute mark. I did bump some deer going in a couple times that I know 100% sure did. Would I have
Hmm.
bumped those deer and could they have hung around? Yeah. So kind of what I wanted to break it down. I'm going to break this down in a couple different categories. Get your
Okay.
answer, and then I'll if mine's different, I'll kind of throw mine in there. So, let's split the difference. You go an hour, I go 30 minutes. So 45 minutes to be our base, okay?
Okay.
How much do you think you should add if you hung a stand and potentially made noise hanging that stand? So, do you think that you should add more if you hung that stand and then you set in it for 30, 45 minutes after it was completely hung, since you had that added noise? Or do you think that 45 minutes is enough in that situation?
That's a tough one. I haven't. I used to roll with a climber about 2 years ago, and I ran that for probably 5 years prior. And I know when I used the climber, that hour mark was actually pushed back more because I knew that. I mean, they clank when you hit up. It's never perfect. It just seems like those climbers are a mess. So I'm trying to imagine in my head, tying sticks to a tree and then trying to get like a saddle platform or even a hang on. Um, Man, I would be going on the more time as opposed to just settling for that 35-40 minute mark.
Okay. I agree. Most of the time when I hang a stand, I'm always like, how to take this long to get up there. And a lot of times I have a tree picked out, but maybe I haven't been in that tree for a while. So you always want to
Hmm.
give yourself a buffer of a little bit extra time. But I probably 75% hunt out of sets that I've hung that day or the day before or something, and I move, bop around everywhere. So that's
Right.
something that when I was, like I said, when I was writing this out, that maybe on those times that I go in and set up, I do need to get in there a little bit earlier, and give that just a little bit more, a little bit more cushion, because like you said, a lot of deer, might bump out of the area for a noise or something, but you also might not bump something because you're in there so early and they're not in off the ag fields yet. Um,
Yeah.
so the next topic I got is, so what do you think? What do you think if you're going into a bedding area? Like, Are you
Yeah.
going to be past that 30-minute mark, 45-minute mark, or you think that's enough to beat them back in there? We're talking.
Yeah.
Let's say late October, early when most people are hunting. Let's do that time frame. So late October, November. What do you think there? You're going to a bedding area. What you think? More time or less time?
Um, Definitely on the more time side of that. I know we have a couple stands out here at my place that doesn't really get hunted until that later part of the fall going into gun season, and it's in heavy bedding. I mean, it's thick honeysuckle. It's real marshy, so like when you walk, your muck boots sink and make that suck noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've kicked deer right out from underneath my stand that I'm going to. All the stand. That's the other thing too, is like all of our stands, they're preset, um, which is kind of nice because you don't have to rush and hang something up. But I also see the plus of mobility. But anyway, back to that, I would say if you're going deep and you're going to bedding, I would definitely give yourself a little bit more time to creep. Um, you're always going to pop a twig. You're always going to, like I said, you're going to find some soggy stuff, and that's what I wrote down. Like the weather conditions have so much of a play on how early we go in. Because there's so many different factors. Whether wind's covering up your noise you're making, then you can kind of, you don't have to be as careful. But if it's no wind or low wind, you can hear a pin drop, and you got, crunchy leaves and all that stuff. Um, you're definitely going to want to set up more time than is when you go in after rain.
Yeah, that's a good point that I didn't even think about. Noting, wind, rain, snow, anything of that factor that's kind of hide your noise on the way in. You could probably get away with getting in there a little bit later and maybe not setting in that rain or
Yeah.
or something like that. But you definitely people say they don't move in the rain, but man, they move in the
Oh,
rain, move right
it,
after the rain. You definitely want to be in there if you got a gap in the rain. There's something
uh,
about October rains that are just magical for some reason. I don't know what it is, but something to it.
another thing on the weather side of things. I don't know if a lot of people think too. A lot of people like to hunt those full moons and stuff, and we'll still hunt them. But if you don't have much cloud cover, I mean, you don't even need a flashlight to walk out there in the morning. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that. And I also think of the silhouette that could present, you walking out there in the timber, or if you got to cross an open field. So you might be able to get away with a later walk in, opposed to going in an hour before.
Yeah, I've noticed one thing that hunting with Garrett from Last Breath, we coyote hunted and it was a full moon, and he said a lot of times, these coyotes can see at night, but they can see better when it's that full moon. So I wonder
Hmm.
if that's kind of the same as deer. If it's real pitch black out, they can see, but they can't see real great. But when they have that brightness of that moon, that's something that you might
I,
want to get in there. Just keep
I
that as an idea because they might be able to see better. Um,
right,
there,
and I think with that full moon, sometimes it screws up the morning hunt because I feel like they're out around milling all night with a better visibility.
yeah,
I
could
don't know if
could
that's
very well
true or
be. Maybe
not.
they're going further away from. They're stretching their distance out further away from where they bed because they're they can see a little better. They feel more confident of what they got going on. Stuff can't
Yeah,
sneak up on them because I know deer feed at night, but that's like the optimal time for coyotes and all the predators that these
right.
deer deal with to be moving around. So it's crazy that there's a lot of content out there about whitetail, but there isn't a lot of like how do they see? How do they no one has the exact answers that could really help us. Just
No
like this
joke.
this topic in general, like no one's saying, "Oh, the moonlight might have an effect on these." I've never heard that before on anything, but there's a really good possibility. It's with same thing with coyotes. It probably is the same thing with deer.
Oh
Um,
yeah. And
so, oh, go ahead.
one more thing on like the early morning that I don't know if anyone else has kind of thought about this, or maybe we're crazy, but like that opening day of gun season, you have the Orange Army, right? So what we like to do is that's probably our earliest sit. We'll get out there in the tree. because you got to think of all the, Joe Blow over there that is coming in 30 minutes before, or coming in, right at sunlight or whatever, just picking all kinds of deer around. If you can get back there into the deep parts, or, you're obviously opening day, you're going to want to sit that perfect gun stand. You know what I mean? Like where they've been skirting you all year. We like to get back there early and, try to beat the crowd to where, oh, this pocket's safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying. So, gun season, allow yourself a lot of extra time from the just to let your kind of zone chill and for the potential of someone else walking in late and bumping something to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break this down. Um, me and you, our opinion is anywhere between 30 to an hour. Like you said, you go in earlier than that a lot of times. You're at that hour mark, right? Like hour is your minimal.
Typically an hour. Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to stretch mine out. I'm going to give it that extra 15, 20 minutes next year and just see if it makes a difference. That's something that I've never done. I've always been like, 20, 30 minutes is good, but I'm going to stretch it out this year and try it. So, if you're hanging a stand, give it a little bit extra time, that 15-minute walk. It's variable to the weather, kind of like all whitetail hunting is. It's variable to the weather. You got a little cushion if you have some cover, some wind. You can think about the moon. The moon might have an effect on you going in and might be able to see a little bit better. And be prepared on those opening day of bow season or opening day of shotgun, rifle, whatever, to be a little bit early because there's potentially going to be a lot of people late pushing deer. And if you're set up in a chill area, you have a better opportunity. That kind of break that down pretty good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right, so now we go to the next topic. How long do you set in the morning? And the reason that I brought this up is it seems like a simple answer, but I picked a time that I thought a lot of people would set to, which is 9 a.m. I was like, okay, 9. I think a lot of people are like, movement's kind of done. I'm going to go get some breakfast, blah, blah. On my Instagram, I had 140 votes. And 128 of those were after 9 a.m. So 93% of these people were saying that they hunted after 9 a.m. In that late October, November range, which a lot of people probably pushed the envelope there. But I was thinking 9 a.m. There's 8% that said they were pretty much done at 9 a.m. So that's kind of our basics of the average, and then we'll talk about kind of what we do. So during that time frame, what do you think what's a good time you think to get out of the stand after a morning set?
We always plan on getting down 10:30. That's usually, it's never even, I don't think it's been a thing we've thought of. It's always 10:30 seems to be like the bell for us to go ahead and start packing up. And there's a reason why we pack up at 10:30, but I won't jump ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's I seem to set a lot I set a lot of all-day sets, but I also bump around a lot midday, and I feel like that 11 o'clock is where I draw the line. 11 o'clock is just like, okay, I feel like if everything's bedded for the day, it's the ruts, anything can happen. I see midday movement. I see a lot of young buck midday movement. I feel like those older age class deers, the rarity of them moving midday is way lower. I feel like they found a doe that morning, or they're with a doe, or they're in a doe bedding area already because they know where one's at. I feel like those young, 1, 2, 3-year-old bucks are just still cruising because they don't really know. Maybe they don't know where they're at all because they're, moving so much, or they don't know what does are coming in. They haven't learned the schedule yet. And but I know a lot of people say they kill their biggest deer, during that time frame. But I feel like I see deer, but I don't see a lot of really big age class deer like that 5 and plus year old deer during that time of the day. That 11 to 1:30. That's when I get down. I'll move. If I have a lunch, a lot of times I'll eat that at the truck, or I'll snag something for lunch and then move. Especially with me hunting, a lot of times I go 17 days straight or 18 days straight.
Oh, yeah.
and it's just nice to have a hot lunch. Sometimes you're just like, man, I'd kill for a Casey's pizza slice right now, you know? That one urban place I got, there's a Casey's like 3 miles away. I'm like, oh man, I could be back in like 5 minutes, you know?
You'll have a
Oh.
joint like that.
So I'm like, a lot of times I'm like, I'm just gonna get down 12. I'll get down at 12 and be back in the stand by 12:30. It's like that close, you know. I like, there's no way I missed anything. But why do you draw the line at 10:30? I'm drawing the line at 11 because um, I feel like there's a movement, a bump movement between 9 and 10 that a lot of people miss, and that's why I picked 9. I feel like
Yeah,
there's the morning movement, then there's like a lull, and then there's a second movement from
yeah,
9 to 10:30 or 11, somewhere in there. Is that kind of what you're seeing too?
yeah. And I see a couple of my buddies that they get down at that 9, like, or they'll send me a snap that they're, at the gas station or something. I'm like, bro, it ain't even been bright that long. Like, what do you mean? But I, what we just sit to 10:30, and Colton and I will look at each other and we'll be like, all right, let's give it 10 minutes. And so we start packing up, and sure enough, that 10 minutes could make or break you if you're not ready. And I know everybody goes, oh, just 10 more minutes. Well, if you're going to do that, you might as well add another 10, because more times than not, we've had people at the base of the stand and had bucks chasing does come right by us. So really, you and I we're not that far off on the morning sit time.
Yeah.
I I I would feel like it'd be a waste to go in at 9 unless it was just absolutely miserable, like I couldn't take it anymore. Which I don't know. I feel like 9 o'clock comes around pretty quick.
Yeah, and my what I always think is like, what am I gonna do from 9 to 11 that's potentially gonna help me kill a buck other than setting in this stand? I'm not
Oh
gonna
yeah.
make a move and reset up at 11 most of the
Hmm.
time. You're gonna take a break. You might pull a trail cam or something, but there's really nothing other than you're gonna do and pack all your stuff out, go back to the truck, and then sit there for a while and make a plan for the afternoon. If you plan on hunting, that whole day you're off work, whatever, you're gonna make a move. Um,
Right.
I would rather push it to 11, have a little bit less time to decide what I'm going to do, a little bit less time to eat. Um, I'm not going to take a nap or anything. I got 4 kids. I don't even know what that is. Um, but, you're not going to, I know probably a lot of people come back, take a nap, and start over, for the afternoon hunt. But
Yeah.
I feel like that 9 a.m. lull kind of like everybody's like, all right, movement's done, everything's back in the bedding. But then, like I said, there's a kick up. There's like a little bump that I
Oh,
see in the middle of the morning there, that midday movement, mid morning movement. It's like some bucks maybe have come off the ag, checked the bedding area, nothing there, and now they're cruising to the second bedding area. Um, and even as I look through my trail cams, like my daylight pictures, a lot of them are either first light or 2 hours, 3 hours after first light. You know,
yeah.
it seems like there's a bump first light, then a pause, and then a bump, and then a long pause midday there. Um, I have set in doe bedding all day, midday, had does get up and mill around, like the same 3 or 4 does mill around, and I set on them 3 days in a row, and I never had a buck come in there midday. I actually had bucks go in there in the morning and leave midday, and not like
Dang.
leave out at that not the mid morning time. Like they go in there in the morning and then they would roll out without a doe at like 9 something. I'm like, well, obviously none of those does are hot yet, or he's bred them and he's moving on, one or the other. But
Right.
it's
I
it's crazy
it's
how you have a mature deer come in and you're like, okay, he's with a doe. He's like, he's in the area. There's does right here. I'm 80 yards from this doe bedding. I'm downwind of it. This is perfect. They're going to be in there bedded. Anything that cruises is going to come to me. And then they cruise in there, and then they cruise right out. You're like, what the hell, dude? you got what you want right there, but they're not ready. So
Well, it's
that's
funny you say that, because like you were talking about a second get up there at 9 o'clock. Everybody at first shooting light, there's that anticipation, right? Well, just looking back, like as you were talking, it just reminded me, like I remember looking down at my time and it being close to 9 o'clock, and there's that second wind where it's like, all right, something's gonna happen here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why you think that? And it's obviously because you had experience with that second movement.
Yeah, it's like you get past that first light and you're kind of like, ah, man, the movement wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. And then if you can tough it out past that 9 o'clock, there's movement. Like Thanksgiving Day, I had
Oh,
one, I had to set till 10. I had to be out of the woods packed up by 10 to get to Thanksgiving. I had one move at 10:20. I'm like,
oh,
gosh. And I packed out the stand and everything. And I'm like, I set till 10. I'm like, dude, I was 20 minutes. And that's the buck that I drew on 3 times the same day. I'm like, this
oh,
this deer is like got my number this year, you know.
hmm.
But like I said, I was like, I'm setting past 9. I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna set past 9. I mean, I do the same thing you do. 10 more minutes. You know, you try to push yourself. 10 more minutes. 5 more minutes. Like, let's see if I can make it till 9:30. Oh, you made it till 9:30. Let's see if you can make it till 9:45. Like, um, that's what I do, and I'm sure a lot of other people do that. So, in your opinion, do you think that 10:30 time is the best time to exit the stand in the morning?
uh, I mean, like I said, packing up at that time to get down. Uh, I guess why I do it so much is because more times than not that I can remember, I've just got out clean at that time.
Yeah,
So I think
that's why I like that 11
that.
o'clock time. Even if I'm way back in there, I feel like I can get out pretty clean. And a lot of
Yep.
times I'm on public, so setting that extra little bit of time, I'm not messing up anybody else's hunt. And if he's out there going to set out there all day, the guy kind of is like, okay, this guy, like, there's kind of like a street cred of, okay, I'm not going to be mad at this guy because he's set till 11. Like, that's a respectable time. If the
Yeah.
dude's got to get out of here, you know? So a lot of times I'm like, you know, this dude might be hunting this ridge right here. I got to walk past that ridge to get out. I'm going to make sure I'm either going to set longer than him or I'm going to set long enough when I walk out. I'm not going to ruin his hunt as well. Um,
Right. Right.
so what do you think about all day sets? My theory every year is kind of changing on these. Over the past 3 or 4 years, I've been doing a shitload of all day sets, and I just don't think that they're the right thing to do in most situations.
Well,
Um,
I'll give you the tip of the hat on doing that, because if nobody on here has tried one, it's it's a slugfest. Um, it's like an overtime game that don't end.
yeah, I
Uh,
did six that 17-day stretch this year.
I tried to
Um,
do it on the week of November 8th when I had that whole week off of work, and I mean, you want to talk about just mentally straining. Um, Physically, it wears you down. Uh, it's very hard. I typically, I mean, well, I'd say 95% of the time during the season, I will not pull one off. I will not do a full sit.
yeah, that's something that I was like really adamant on myself because you know time and stand kills, time and stands kills, and I'm not saying it's not a good thing to do. It's just really situational. You have to be
Yep.
like I've had incredible mornings. Like this year, I had 3 shooter bucks. Um, like I said, I drew on one 3 times. I mean, he was in the brush. He went bad angle, almost in a shooting lane, turned left, like almost killing a deer. He's sub 20 yards and I can't get a shot. Like that he's in the thick stuff, you know, but I almost kill a deer 3 times and then have 2 other shooter bucks in that area within 80 yards and then the evening nothing. Like
Dang.
nothing. To see a doe didn't do anything and I never left. Like I mean, and it every time I think about like when we had the encounter with Magnum a few years ago, we're like, oh, we're setting all days in this doe bedding, and then we seen him leave that doe bedding, decided to set anyways. If we would have tried to follow him in the direction that we seen him go, we probably would have had better success than sitting there hoping that he came back to us. So
Right.
that's something I'm also going to change next year. I'm not going to say I'm not going to do an all day set, but it's going to have to be a pretty good situation for me to do it. I would rather get down, feel more motivated about my spot. You're going to have more fun by getting down. Like you said, it's not going to be a mental drag.
Yep.
And there's something about a fresh spot that always feels good. Like, okay, you're like, oh, I've been here all day. My sit's been here all day. I peed out of the stand 3 times. Like,
Yep.
I'm going to get down and move. So that's another thing I'm going to change up next year. I'm not going to try to hunt the same spot all day unless even if I get down and move like 200 yards. Like, just try something new. Because one thing about hunting, those all day sets is, okay, you had the information of what happened there this morning. You had the information of what happened there that evening. You sat there all day, right? Well, you're going to go for maybe another all day set because this is your money spot. Well, you didn't only waste that whole day, but you wasted getting any of other intel from your property that day.
Right.
So you don't know
Right.
what's going on 2 ridges away. You don't know what's going on at this other stand that's really good. If you would have split those days up and you just said, well, I didn't see anything this morning, but I seen good movement over here in the evening. Maybe I should give that stand a morning set. So that's kind of what I want to do is try to instead of trying to hit the bullseye with one shot, I'm going to give it more like a shotgun method and
There
hunt
you
a
go.
lot of different areas instead of trying to get that spot right on the money.
Mm-hmm.
Hunt a lot of different areas that I think a buck might be in instead of just trying to pin him down to one spot that I think he will show up the most.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm almost there. Like, oh yeah, he'll show up here eventually, but how long am I gonna have to set there? Like, I had a spot picked out on the buck that I missed called JoJo, and I said this deer is going to use this pinch sometime during daylight out this year. I guarantee it. And I was right. He used it like November 3rd at 11:30 in the morning,
Dang.
and I'm like, well, I was right. I knew he was going to use this pinch at some point. It
Mm-hmm.
was a small water pinch that a mobile cam covered the whole thing, so I knew if anything was going in and out of there. Um, but I was like, he's going to use it to get to one piece to the other at some point in the year. And I was right, but a guy would have had to sit there all season to have one opportunity. So
That'd be rough.
something I'm going to try to change is, but I think that best time to exit, is that 11 a.m., 11:30 time frame. Are you going to miss a potential shooter midday? Yeah, you might. Am I telling you not to set midday if you can? No, but maybe you should try an area. There's not a lot of areas that are good morning and evening. It takes a special spot to do that.
Yeah.
But especially if you had does come in, maybe that you alerted one and you're like, oh, I'm gonna hang out anyways, but that doe remembers that she was alerted by something over there this morning, and she don't go
Oh
back
yeah.
over there. I've had that happen. So
Don't get me started on this
yeah.
here.
Okay, so so let's get into the afternoon. What time are you going in the afternoon? I'm probably like in November. If I gonna do an all day thing, I'll probably be set up by 1. But if it's something where I'm like going out gun season or something, I'm probably gonna be about that. You get that daylight savings time, which I think they should
Oh,
axe that shit. That's a devastation to whitetail
oh, yeah.
hunters. But I'm probably about that 2:30 mark if I'm just gonna hunt the evening. I want to be set up ready to go by 2:30. So what are you thinking there?
Well, I usually try to throw a couple weekday sits, just because I have a 10-minute drive from work, and if I can get off, at 3:30, 4 o'clock, even with that daylight savings, I have a spot to where like if I'm feeling froggy that night, I don't have to put too much disturbance on the woods, because I got a stand that's like 60 yards off the back of my grandpa's house. Um, and they're used to a lot of
Yeah, you
movement and
killed
stuff.
out of there this year, didn't you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
that's what I
Thanksgiving.
thought. Yeah,
Yeah, so again, a lot of this is situational because a lot of guys don't have that spot.
yeah. I
Um,
got a spot like that where it's like I might not see a bunch of deer, but I might see a deer. Good buck might be over there hitting a scrape or checking the backside of a doe bedding. But
yeah,
it's not like a really, really good spot, but it's a spot I can get into really, really easy. I have those too.
yep,
I just waste a stand there pretty much. Like I'm just gonna waste a stand here, and pretty much if it happens, it happens. If it don't, but any time
yeah.
out there is better than no time out there in a day.
I would say I mean, I'd be if I'm getting off after 4. Um, once that daylight savings hits, I'm probably going to axe that hunt. But, early on in the year, if I can get out at, hell, even 5 o'clock, it don't get dark till, 7:38, you're all right. But I guess in the evenings, like if it's the weekend, I don't really think about it too much. Usually I'll get done with that morning hunt. I'll come inside, help out around the house with the kids and everything. And, I'll be like, well, don't be waiting on dinner for me, because I'm going. And usually I'll leave, 3:30, and I'll walk back there to the woods.
All right. So yeah, you're giving about that an hour difference. Most of the time in the evening, I don't see movement that early.
Right.
I'm just trying to give it that buffer time of me getting set up, staged up. It's a funny thing about the evening hunts. I don't know if you do this or not, but like the anticipation rises all night.
Oh
Like
God.
you're like
Yeah.
rising, rising, rising. And then when you hit that 35, 40 minutes left, when it's the
Yep.
best chance that you see a deer, the
Mm-hmm.
anticipation level is like at zero. You're like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to see anything. It's
I'm
like
reaching for the bow.
the best chance for you to see a deer is when you're like, oh, the night's over. I'm not going to see anything. And I do that every time. I'm like, this is literally the best chance I'm going to see a deer is these last 30, 45 minutes. And my brain's like, you're not going to see anything tonight. You've been sitting here for hours, haven't seen anything. Like, it's just so
Dude.
funny that it's like that.
And I've even shot called it before, where we'll be sitting in the stand. It'll be like 15 minutes left to go, and I'll be like, all right, in 10 minutes here, we're gonna see something or hear something. Sure enough, right at the bell,
Yeah.
it's always crunch.
Yeah,
It,
I had a buck I called the grade 8, and I had both my boys out with me in the blind, and I was like, we had some does come out behind us, and they were like, shoot them, and I was like, well, let's just wait, till last light. So the bucks like to come out right at dark, and I had the grade 8 come out, and I rattled them over to like 65, 70 yards in the field, and
dang.
they still don't understand like the distance of a bow, and they're like, shoot him, but they all like got to look out there and see like a 150 high 140 class
Mm-hmm.
8-pointer just right there in the middle of a field. So they were jacked about it, but I was like, I can't shoot that far, and my one kid Bladen, he was pretty devastated that I couldn't shoot that far, but I'm trying to explain to him like the bows, the arrow only goes so far, bud, and that's a long shot with a chance of if I had a gun. He's in the background. If you had a gun, he's already learned. He's already learned the right answer. But I said, if you had a gun, then that 60, 70 yard shot's way doable. You could make that happen. But
Right.
that's like you said, that last light, man. He came out, hit a scrape, and I'm like, man, it's just so. These bucks are on the edge of a field. They're a last light creature for me, and that's why I haven't killed a lot of deer on the edge of a field, because it's just not, not a bucks on the edge of a field, because it's just not in my area. There's too much pressure on the fields, and they just don't get there. So, you've set all night, you haven't seen anything. You're in a timber set scenario. How long are you waiting to get out of the stand? Are you getting out right at last light, or are you
uh,
getting out? Are you waiting a little while, or what are you doing there?
well, it kind of, I go back to that trust your gut. Um, sometimes during the year, I feel like I'm able to assess the situation and be like, all right, I'll just get down, right once it hits that time, I'll be able to get down. But there's a lot of times where something in your body just holds you up, and it's just like, no, just wait. And sure enough, something's going to come down the trail behind you. And I've had my wife worried to death before. I've sat out there in the dark after shooting light for almost 2 hours, because I've had deer feeding right underneath my stand, and I can hear them crunching. I'm like, I can't go anywhere, and I don't want to blow this up. So it's all situational. I guess it's more of a feel thing for me. It varies my time.
Yeah, I feel like this is another thing that's not talked about at all. Like people talk about, you know, exiting during the day, but like at night, like what is the correct move to exit? And I know a lot of people talk like, man, if you're getting to 10 minutes or less, like and your buck hasn't shown, exit the field then.
Oh man.
I'm like, oh,
Oh,
Bill Winky, he was saying, if my buck hasn't showed up, I'm gonna exit early, and I'm like, man, that's just insane to me.
I feel like
Because
blue
there's
balling.
there's gonna be something. All the way out. You're like, man, what if I waited 5 minutes? Like what, you know?
Yeah.
But I think he's worried about the camera light as well. So that probably has a factor. But I didn't know. I've heard of other people doing that as well. But mine is situational too. If I'm in a timber setting, um, a lot of
Oh yeah.
times and it's dark, I'm getting out of there. I feel like if that buck hasn't showed up in between the food and the bedding, I'm not gonna wait any longer. I'm gonna get out of here as quick as I can because he could show up in 5 minutes. Um,
Yeah. A lot of times on those late encounters, hunting the woods, because I don't hunt any field edges either. You you ever go to pull back on a buck with 5 minutes left? I mean, you're early season definitely. You're having a hell of a time trying to find that pin.
yeah,
Um, and that's why I got rid of my peep. Actually, I was doing some research on the guys that go elk hunting, and a lot of the guys remove the peep just because, well, one, it's another thing that can go wrong, uh, but it actually allows more light into your housing, so your eye can actually focus, for that last, your legal limit time.
yeah, I could see that be beneficial. You're not looking through a keyhole. You're looking, through more of a space there. But that now on a field edge, that's situational. If I have deer there, I try to wait. Depends on which way they're feeding. That's another thing. Like you could wait there 10 minutes and then that buck comes out 75 yards from you and you don't know he's there. Like I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I wait 30 minutes on a food source." I'm like, "Man, the more I wait there, it feels like the more chance he's going to show up."
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, if I got deer right underneath me, I might wait a little bit, but a lot of times I'll set my stand up to where I can at least get away a little bit before I have
Hmm.
the potential to maybe like I'll walk out a creek or maybe I'll make a trail through a little gap of woods to
Yes.
try to avoid that main field. I got one spot though, man. Like it's one of those you're like, if I sit here, I'm gonna bump deer. It's like just there's no way if ands or buts about it. If I
Hey.
sat here, I'm gonna bump deer. So this year, I decided I'm not gonna hunt there early. I had bucks daylight on cam there early. I'm like, man, like they're not really consistent, but you're going off of cam, so you're only getting a little bit of the picture. Maybe they're here more than you think. And then I didn't hunt it, waiting to the rut, and then the pressure on that field was like and so high during the rut and gun season. I'm like, this year I hunt there, I'm hunting early. Like I'm not gonna wait and save this spot for everybody else. I'm gonna go in there hard and hunt that spot
Well,
early.
we got a funny saying that we say back and forth to each other. If you ain't bumping, you ain't thumping. So, so
Yeah,
that's just no. It's got to happen.
yeah,
Uh,
it's tough, man, to not bump deer and to be in the right zone and pick the right day when that buck's gonna daylight. Um, but I like to get out at dark. Like I'm a get down, get out kind of guy. On a food source for sure. If I can get out without bumping deer, and the timber, same
mhm.
way. If that deer hasn't showed, a lot of times I'm packing up a set, so I always have that 15, 20 minutes at the base of the stand that I'm worried about. Um, so
Trust your gut.
yeah, that's one of the hardest points. And for a new guy, like, where do you get the answer to that? Like, I don't
Right.
think there is a correct answer. It's just kind of like you said, just do what you think's right, and that's the best you can do. Like,
Oh yeah.
unless you
Well, and
have like a perfect exit from a food plot or something, or you can have someone drive into a field and bump deer, which I think if you do that a lot, that has an adverse effect on deer as well. I
right.
heard Bill Winky's using a remote control car.
Yeah, I heard that
I'm
too.
like, this guy's breaking out all the top secret tricks. I mean, like
Well,
I've
another,
called it deer and they just stand there. I'm like,
I would be afraid to do that. I
yeah,
wouldn't. I just couldn't.
yeah,
Uh, but another thing for like a new person that kind of took me a while to realize, if you sit there and listen, and it seems like your ears are at a heightened level at that time just because you're in the zone. um you know you can almost pick that time that those squirrels go up a tree, at night, and if you're hearing walking, more than not, it's going to be a possum, a coon, or a deer. So if it's not the same walking that you've been hearing all afternoon. Those squirrels will go up the tree,
Yeah.
before it gets dark. So if you're hearing something walking around, you might want to just double check your surroundings.
Yeah, that's good advice. Well, do you have anything else to add to this, man? I think this has been a good conversation for, not we might not have taught anybody something that's a seasoned hunter, but maybe it made them think about some of the times that they pick and choose to go in, because all these decisions weigh so much on your success.
Yep.
Literally going in 30 minutes earlier might do it. One day, staying 30 minutes later, one day might do it. It's just crazy
Oh,
how such a small detail can really make the difference in killing that buck that you're after. But that's the game that we play. People say it's a game of inches, but I think it's a game of decisions. Like
right.
there's 1,000 decisions you make throughout the season, and a
There you
thousand is
go.
not even probably an overestimate. It's like you make it so many decisions day by day in your head, like I'm going to set 10 more minutes, or I'm going to move over here, and then you change that, or I'm going to hang this cam here. If you'd have hung it 3 trees over, you'd have got the picture. Like there's so many steps that you have to just nail to make it happen.
Right.
That I think this was a good conversation to have. And like I said, as I was writing the notes, I was like, I've been doing the same thing for so long. Why don't I just see if something else will work? Like I'll just
Yeah.
try
Or why
something
do I?
else. Yeah. Or why don't I do that? It like made me open my eyes and think, well, why don't I do that? And maybe that's the thing that I need to change where, I'm back to killing giants again and not, just really, good bucks. Like that.
Middle of the mall.
Yeah. Yeah. So what?
Well, I got two things I just want to add really quick. One popped into my head here as we were talking about at night. If you're starting out hunting, I know it's a lot of money to somewhat get the bow around and all that stuff, but it's if anything, I looking back when I started, I wish I would have spent the money to get a lighted notch. If you can do that, it's going to help you out so much more. Just getting a better validation on where your shot placement was. Um, that's one thing I'd like to add. And then another thing, I know you and I kind of had a tough season. It was a grind fest, especially you. You were you were grinding all the time. You gotta, no matter what, you gotta keep your A game out there. If you're starting out, you're gonna have your misses and blown out and all that stuff. You gotta make sure you're still going in early. You're still you know try to get all that. I like to take just Dove unscented soap, take a shower. But you really need to keep on your A game because I like to think of it as a numbers game. I know that could be wrong in some people's heads, but if you don't keep grinding, you're definitely not going to kill those deer. So that's what I have to add.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's hard to just keep going, but that's something that you have like if you want to kill big deer every single year, that's just part of it. Like you just something that you have to do. So there's years where like the year before where I was bucked out in October and it was easy.
Yep.
Homie had killed a buck. We'd been on top of other deer. We were on top of deer in November. Homie, drawed on a deer in November and spooked him, a giant. We then late season he missed one. Like we were on deer literally every single part of the year,
Right.
and encountering like giant deer. And then you get to this year where I pass good ones, and then I have a hard November, and then the hardest thing about it is, man, you wait for that November, and then it's over, and then you're like, well, shit. Like
Yeah.
now I'm waiting for weather. Like once you get past that first gun, it's really hard to keep that motivation for me
Oh
to
yeah.
say, it could happen today. It could happen today, which it can, and this year I was pretty well good with not killing a buck, and I've had that blessing of weather with that late season food,
Yep.
so it all came together at the end for me, and I was able to kill a nice buck and put a cap on the season. But like you said, that's a good point for new listeners that's kind of not related to this episode. You just got to grind it out sometimes.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. My kids in
No,
the background
I
screaming, crying. Someone's probably beating someone up. But yeah, only you could hear that yell that I just did. I turned the mic off and then yelled, so you only got the privilege of hearing that.
That's awesome.
Oh, but all right, man. Well, we'll wrap it up here. I appreciate you spending some time with me and talking about this topic. Let the people know where they can find you one more time before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, this was really fun tonight. You guys can find me on Instagram and Facebook. You can find our podcast, Blue Collar Whitetails, on Spotify, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Like I said, don't bite. We're every day just like everyone else, and we don't care big or small. Share them all. So that's what we're about.
All right, man. Well, I'll make sure and tag you up so people can find you. Have a good night, brother.
Hey, thanks again. Take it easy.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps up this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the In Stand Time Talk. We broke down a lot in this episode, and we kind of were chatting off air there about, just recording this episode and talking about the stuff in it kind of opened up our eyes to maybe some different options that we could do each year to change up our game to see if it has an effect. Maybe me going in a little bit earlier, maybe setting a little bit later in the day for him. He said, well, maybe I should go to that 11 o'clock instead of, he's like, it's 30 minutes. Like, maybe I should go to 11 instead of 10:30. He said 10:30 is just what we always have done. And 30 minutes early is what I've always done, and he goes in an hour and a half early. He's a successful hunter. I'm a successful hunter. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but is one way better than the other? For you, you don't really know until you try it. So I think we're both going to take a little bit of each one and maybe give it a try and see if it has an effect on our season. And you never know what really small detail can add all that extra juice that you need to kill that buck that you're after. And every minute matters, and every decision matters. Unfortunately, and like I said, we got to make a bunch of decisions each year. But this isn't the end of going back to the basics. We have a lot more to talk. Like I said, I also have some Legend of the Woods series coming, but I'm really enjoying this in-depth kind of one topic, digging in really deep and diving through. It's really fun, and it's making me kind of open my eyes to my game of some spots that I wouldn't even have thought to change if I didn't do this series. So I appreciate you guys listening to me, and coming to the show. And, I had the idea to do this season, but if I didn't have you guys to listen, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm learning. Hopefully you guys are learning. Like always, try to do the right thing. Try to leave a legacy. Love you guys. And Whitetail Legacy is out.